And we are live. Welcome to the Bandicoot broadcast's big debut. It's your resource for crypto coaching, education, and exclusive interviews. This is where we can discuss crypto and finance while helping you forge your own financial freedom. There is a legal disclaimer. We are not financial advisors, nor are we accountants. So please consult with the professional of your choosing before making any crypto investments. That said, let's move on to our inaugural Bandicoot Biblio, where we highlight great reads that can help you learn more about finance and economics. Today, we are talking with retired Army Captain Mark Evangelist, lifelong entrepreneur with a background in finance, accounting, and business. Mark is the owner of Bitcoin Advisors and is one of our trusted crypto coaches and consultants. Mark has selected the Bitcoin Standard by Dr. Saifedean Ammous, hopefully I didn't botch that, for today's discussion. So let's bring him on. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Hey, Jess. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for tackling this monster with me. But we'll get into more video streaming and get some more good information out for folks. So, you chose the Bitcoin Standard as the book for our first Biblio. What interested you the most about this book?
Well, I found Dr. Ammous is just a huge fan of the Austrian Economics. And the book touches on Keynesian, monetarists, as well as Austrian economics. And what I found interesting overall about the book is that it really expressed the definition of insanity. And in addition to, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So when we move on and we just give a few examples, going back to the Yap Island in Micronesia with the Rise Stone. Well, they were doing great for a long time because the stones would sit in plain view of the civilization. Everyone knew who owned what and how much the stones were worth and what commodities or goods were associated with that stone. If someone were to sell the stone, everyone in the village knew it. Well, James O'Keefe shipwrecks on the island, comes there, sees all the coconuts, says he can get these coconuts and create coconut oil, but he needs the islanders to help him. Well, push comes to shove, islanders want nothing to do with it, so O'Keefe goes to Hong Kong, gets a big ship and explosives so he can quarry his own Rias stones. Brings them to the island. The chief says, no way, you didn't do the blood, sweat, and tears and work using Yapese island folk. These stones mean nothing. Well, the islanders didn't agree, hence too many stones, crash of the economy. This happened in Western Africa with the agri glass beads that were very rare until the Europeans came to trade with them and found that they had glass technology in Europe. They produced the beads in mass quantities, came in, destroyed the economy with too much agri beads. And again, another example in North America in the 1600s, seashells were actually used as currency until the Europeans coming over realized they had bigger ships that they could dig up the ocean floor, create an abundance of these seashells, thereby crashing the economy. In every case, it left the inhabitants with their savings and lifestyles in ruin.
Yeah, I couldn't have given a better synopsis myself. I did read this book before this interview, so I'm considering that a win. But, you know, the recurring theme of stock to flow ratios, right? And, you know, it's kind of in line what's happening with the United States right now with all of the money printing that's going on. And, you know, I'll let you take stock to flow ratios further in depth if you'd like. But what are some examples of civilizations that purposely devalued their currency?
Interesting. And these currencies were tremendously doing well for their civilizations for a long time until they weren't. And so the Arius coin, it was created by Julius Caesar. It initially had 8 grams of gold in every coin. It was widely accepted for 75 years until Nero began coin clipping. Now, coin clipping is the practice of reducing the amount of gold in each coin. This continued for 3 centuries. So they would confiscate the coins, melt them down, and then create coins with less gold. So check this out. So the grams of gold went from 8 grams to 7.2, from 7.2 grams of gold to 6.5, from 6.5 to 5.5, and finally from 5.5 to 4.5. And once again, the Roman Empire, along with Europe and the Mediterranean, crumbled and their citizens became peasants.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to what's going on, except we don't have gold backing the US dollar. So what next, right?
Right.
So what civilization has been the most successful at maintaining a sound currency?
Great question. So Byzantium was formed after the last Roman Empire, Emperor Diocletian, who was known for his fiscal and monetary trickery. So Constantine the Great took over, and for the failed Roman Empire, Constantine committed to maintaining the solidus coin at the 4.5 grams of gold. Constantine moved east to Constantinople. This was the meeting point of Asia and Europe. So the solidus got renamed the Byzant and lasted until 1453. Over 1,200 years.
It's pretty impressive.
Until overtaken by the Ottomans, and we all know the Ottoman Empire, and that was the next step in history.
And now we have Istanbul. So the book refers to government money, and so can you please elaborate on that?
Sure. We call government money now fiat. It's the Latin word for decree, order, authorize. Fiat was to be redeemed for gold until it wasn't. Within a few weeks of World War I starting, the gold standard was suspended. Now, a little history. Wars prior to World War I were relatively short because they had to be financed with the money that the leaders had. They couldn't tax too much, and they couldn't really create more gold unless it was pilfered from the countries they ended up winning. So every war was very short. They had a certain amount of resources, and then both sides had the same constraints, monetary constraints. And that's why peace, if the war didn't end soon by victory, they were negotiated peace settlements because funding was a problem. Not for World War I. This led the world's largest economies into central planned and government failures by going off the gold standards. Now let's talk a little about Keynesian economics. The creed is consumption and spending to satisfy the immediate wants and cure unemployment. All governments seek more power and a fiat with no gold backing, which provides just the unlimited amount of fiat needed to always increase spending and meet the politicians' needs.
So I had never really thought about that before, about how short wars used to be. I should have paid more attention in history class, but I'm catching up now. So I appreciate folks like you that are willing to continue to educate us, and hopefully something will eventually stick to my brain. So you're touching on Keynesian economics, which was post-World War I, correct?
No, it lives today in imaginatively, it lives today in every single academic book in macroeconomics that our students around the world get to be taught.
So, but when did Keynesian economics kind of come to fruition? Was it prior to World War I, or was it a result of World War I?
It was after World War I. John Maynard Keynes, Keynesian economics, who was a failed statistician, an investor in England, writes this book that ends up becoming taken up by the British monarchy, and he becomes out of nowhere the man when it comes to economics. So he's touted like that. And because at the time, the pound sterling was the global currency. So this knighting, if you will, of John Maynard Keynes became Keynesian economics, where we are today. That bottom line, spending will cure all problems and unemployment. We'll talk a little later about how that circle is truly insanity, but it's still respected and taught today in our schools.
Such a circus. So, all right. So thank you for refreshing me on Keynesian economics and the genesis of that. So it professes that spending will cure monetary and fiscal ills. Can you touch on what Austrian economics professes?
My favorite subject. Austrian economics draws on the culmination of hundreds of years of pre-World War I classical Scottish, French, Spanish, Arab, and ancient Greek economists. The Austrian view is if the money supply is fixed, then economic growth will cause prices of real goods and services to drop, allowing people to purchase increasing quantities of goods and services with their money in the future. A currency that appreciates in value incentivizes savings. As savings gain, purchasing power over time does also. So, unlike the Keynesians who say, spend it now, the money's only going to buy you less, under Austrian economics, then a fixed money supply says, save your money. As it's appreciating, you'll be able to buy more.
Yeah, and never mind the whole concept of debt, right? And taking on all debt. We're such a debt-based economy. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have debt, you have wealth. So yeah, I can definitely see the push toward Austrian economics. So we covered early money and the gold standard and government fiat currency. How does Bitcoin fit in?
This is where the author does a great job tying it all together and transitioning us into the Bitcoin standard. Not the gold standard, the Bitcoin standard. So Bitcoin represents the first truly digital solution to the problem of money, and in it, the solution of salability. This is everyone being comfortable with the currency or the Bitcoin. So it's widely accepted. The soundness, limited supply, and the sovereignty. It's my money, no one else's. It offers a compelling solution to the problem of money, offering individuals sovereignty over money that is resistant to unexpected inflation. Very important point. While also being highly saleable across space and time. Societies and individuals who choose a sound monetary standard, such as the Romans under Caesar, the Byzantines under Constantine, or the Europeans under the gold standards, benefited immensely. Bitcoin is the hardest money ever invented. Growth in its value cannot possibly increase its supply. Growth can only make the network more secure and immune to attack.
Yeah, I actually just got a message from one of my developers this morning who's a huge Bitcoin bull. He goes, whoa, nice. Apparently 46 million plus Americans own Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, has a finite quantity that can be mined. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%. For those who feel like they're a little uncomfortable with digital currency and they still don't understand what Bitcoin is, that's why we're here, is to educate you guys, because this freight train is not going to stop anytime soon.
Just beginning.
So can you speak to Bitcoin's halving schedule? and why it's important to the success of Bitcoin. And when we talk about the halving, we're talking about the mining of Bitcoin. The 21 million Bitcoin is the cap that can be mined. So
there's many decimal places that follow that, but for the most part, 21 million.
Yeah, it's kind of infinitesimal in its mathematics, right? But at the end of the day, 21 million is where it ends.
Correct.
So can you kind of explain to our viewers what the halving schedule looks like, and again, why it's so critical to Bitcoin's success?
Yeah, it was beautifully put together. So the quantity of Bitcoins created is programmed and cannot be altered, no matter how much effort or energy is expended. This is achieved through a process called difficulty adjustment, which is perhaps the most ingenious aspect of Bitcoin's design. As more people choose to hold Bitcoin, this drives up the market value of Bitcoin and makes the mining of new coins more profitable, which drives more miners to expend more resources. Now, each block of Bitcoin are mined approximately every 10 minutes. Now, to better understand the genius of this, in that as the value goes up, the amount of Bitcoins mined in each block goes down, thereby each block holding less Bitcoin, but also creating more value for the miners, because again, the price is going up, the amount of Bitcoins per block is going down. So here's what it currently looks like. Since its inception, in January 3rd, 2009, the first blocks were 50 Bitcoin per block, approximately every 10 minutes.
I'd love to have that first block.
Although a lot of them were lost. We know that 4 million, 18.6 million as at this point have been apparently lost. So that was about 7,200. That was 7,200 Bitcoin a day. So fast forward about 4 years later, November 2nd, 2012, the next halving occurs. 25 million Bitcoin per block, 3,600 a day. July 9th, 2016, the next halving. We're down to 12.5 Bitcoin per block, 1,800 a day. Now the last halving took place on February 11th, 2020 last year. We're down to 6.25 Bitcoin per block, or 900 a day.
It's getting tougher.
There you go. So the next halving will occur in 2024, 3.125 Bitcoin per block, 450 a day. And of course, we can go on, but 2028, 1.56.
My apologies.
225 Bitcoin per day. And so that is the definition of price, Bitcoin going up, mining Bitcoin per block going down, and more. It brings more and more miners into the fold because the price of Bitcoin's going up such that just because you got halved means you're probably making more because of the price of Bitcoin.
And so the halvings occur every 4 years.
Yes.
And then what's the end date for mining Bitcoin?
I believe we're talking 2140. So that's how it just keeps
exponentially, lower, but yet the value increases. It really is such an elegant and beautifully constructed store of value. So can you share some facts about Bitcoin that you learned from Dr. Saifedean's book?
Yes. It's a nice list. So Bitcoin was built on 100% verification and zero trust. There's a maximum, as we discussed, of only 21 million coins ever being produced. And this is the divisibility genius of Bitcoin, where, it could be $50,000, $60,000 a coin, but the Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million Satoshis, making it very, you can have a penny and you can have $1,000 bill.
So it's 100 million. I thought it was 100,000.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good
100 million.
refresher for me, since I'm a Bitcoin certified professional. Well, this is why these conversations are so great, because we constantly refresh on these numbers.
Yeah, so you can imagine, even if Bitcoin goes to 1 million, and it can be fractionated down to 100 million Satoshi.
One Satoshi is still pretty valuable.
It will be.
Yes.
Another thing, it can't be tampered with or interrupted. And this is one thing I found fascinating about the book. Questions I wanted answered. So if a nuclear war were to destroy half the planet, Bitcoin would continue to live uncorrupted. It would continue to offer its services. It would continue to pay people to keep it alive. The only way to shut it down is to kill every server that hosts it. So again, Bitcoin is a software. It's not a hardware. And that means it can be on our computers, on our phones. It can be anywhere around the globe. So half the globe could go dark. Bitcoin lives.
Well, it could even be off planet, you know.
Exactly.
As long as there's one node that's surviving any place connected to the internet, you know, it's impossible to take down. It's just 99% of global power goes out. You still got one node hanging on someplace, and Bitcoin's gonna keep going.
Here's a few more things. All the parties that make Bitcoin work are individually dispensable to its operation. Nobody is essential to Bitcoin. So there's Bitcoin, and then there's the other altcoins. Because the Bitcoin is not a corporation, it's run by nobody. That's the beauty of it. The altcoins,
you smile so big.
the altcoins are literally corporations run by people that by its very nature can be corrupted.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there's no management or corporate structure. Bitcoin is the first example of absolute scarcity. It is highly scalable across time, nearly impossible for any authority to lower its value or confiscate it. Remember all the gold back in the Roman times? They confiscate it, melt it down, and devalue it by coin clipping. In the 20s, gold was confiscated, held in banks. Fiat was printed, assuring us it was redeemable in gold until it wasn't. And finally, the Bitcoin blocks are limited to 1 megabyte or 500 transactions a day. 500,000 transactions a day, my bad.
It's just it's so powerful. I mean, once you wrap your head around it, and it's really wonderful to read books like this to sort of refresh on how solid of a store of value Bitcoin is, and how sovereign it allows people to be with their wealth. And it's something like this has never existed before, even with gold. So I just love this conversation. So let's get serious, Mark. Is Bitcoin for criminals?
Is Bitcoin for criminals? God, Jess, I got to tell you, it almost comes up in every conversation. And if it doesn't, I bring it up. Okay? So one of the very common misperceptions about Bitcoin from its inception is that it would make a great currency for criminals and terrorists. Well, many of these articles have been retracted, but not before they have imprinted that idea into the minds of many, including misguided criminals.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think, what was it? Silk Road was
right.
A website but I mean, the dark web is always going to exist. And, you know, I think probably one of the most criminal currencies in the history of the world might be the US dollar. I mean, arguably. So,
here's another thing. Do you know the FBI has been extremely successful utilizing the immutable blockchain of Bitcoin to capture criminals?
It's traceable, people. It's public.
The ledger. Yeah,
the blockchain ledger, and just in case you're a criminal and you think that you can use crypto to like enact your criminal acts, yeah, all of the ledgers are public knowledge. So if somebody needs to track you down, they're going to find you with blockchain, as opposed to cash, dirty money, that can be hidden and laundered and apparently printed bottomlessly. So, I think that arguably Bitcoin is kind of an anti-criminal, an anti-money laundering currency. But time will tell. Somebody will try to figure out a way to use it in nefarious ways, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you so much, Mark, for giving us such a synopsis of this book. I mean, I have to say, to get through it was a little bit challenging for me, but I love reading books. I don't always have time to. I'm sure that our listeners don't always have time to either. So hopefully this kind of like pulls the highlights out for folks and stuffs some more knowledge into their brains. But do you have any closing remarks for us?
Yeah. All I got to say is Bitcoin's creator was motivated by creating a peer-to-peer electronic cash. And he built a design for that end. Since its inception in 2008, his design has succeeded in producing digital cash. And surprisingly and unsurprisingly, nothing else.
Yeah, I think that Bitcoin is so much easier to transact than even dealing with fiat and banks and credit card payments and everything else. So I would agree with you. I think, do you know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, Mark?
Thank you for even asking me that question. But no, I don't.
The jury's still out. We may never know, but thank you so much, Mark, for talking with us. If you guys want to get a hold of Mark, I have his Calendly schedule down at the bottom. We also definitely check out his website too at www.bitcoinadvisors.io. And I hope that everybody enjoyed the first Bitcoin Bandicoot Biblio. So thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you, Jess. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.